Mr. Williams and Vicky talked for hours. They found out that they had a lot in common and enjoyed each other's company. As the night came to an end, Mr. Williams walked Vicky back to her apartment and bid her good night, but not without giving her a gentle kiss on the cheek. Once upon a time in a bustling city, there lived a beautiful and hard-working young woman named Vicky. She worked as a secretary at a prestigious law firm, where she caught the eye of her married boss, Mr. Williams. Despite being married, Mr. Williams couldn't help but be drawn to Vicky's intelligence, charm, and work ethic. Vicky was aware of her boss's feelings towards her, but she never paid much attention to it. She was a strong and independent woman who believed in staying true to her values. However, as days went by, Mr. Williams' feelings for Vicky only grew stronger. He found himself looking forward to coming to work every day, just to catch a glimpse of her. As they finished the project, Mr. Williams asked Vicky to join him for dinner to celebrate their success. Vicky was hesitant at first, knowing that it would be inappropriate to go out with her married boss. But Mr. Williams assured her that it would be strictly professional, and she finally agreed. That night, over dinner, Mr. Williams and Vicky talked for hours. They found out that they had a lot in common and enjoyed each other's company. As the night came to an end, Mr. Williams walked Vicky back to her apartment and bid her good night, but not without giving her a gentle kiss on the cheek. From that day on, Mr. Williams and Vicky's relationship changed. They started spending more time together, both in and out of the office. They became each other's confidants, and Mr. Williams found himself falling deeply in love with Vicky. He knew that he was risking his marriage, but he couldn't help his feelings for her. Meanwhile, Vicky was also struggling with her emotions. She couldn't deny the strong connection she had with her boss. However, she also knew that he was married, and she didn't want to be the reason for breaking up a family. One day, Mr. Williams' wife, Mrs. Williams, came to the office unexpectedly. She had been away for a business trip and decided to surprise her husband. When she saw Vicky, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. She had heard about Vicky from her husband, and she couldn't deny the fact that she was beautiful and intelligent. As Mrs. Williams and Vicky talked, Mrs. Williams couldn't help but notice the way her husband looked at her. She knew that something was going on between them, and it made her heart ache. She loved her husband deeply, and the thought of him being with someone else tore her apart. Mrs. Williams went home that day, feeling hurt and betrayed. She confronted her husband about Vicky, and he couldn't deny his feelings for her. Mrs. Williams was heartbroken, and she gave her husband an ultimatum: either end things with Vicky or lose her forever. Mr. Williams was torn between his love for Vicky and his commitment to his wife. He knew that he couldn't keep stringing both women along, and he had to make a decision. He couldn't imagine his life without Vicky, but he also didn't want to lose his wife and family. In the midst of all this chaos, Vicky found out that Mrs. Williams had confronted her boss. She demanded to know the truth and told him that she couldn't continue their relationship if he was still married. Mr. Williams was torn, but he couldn't bear the thought of losing Vicky. He made the difficult decision to leave his wife and be with Vicky. Mrs. Williams was devastated when her husband told her that he was leaving her for his secretary. She couldn't believe that the man she loved and trusted would break her heart like this. She moved out of their home, and Mr. Williams and Vicky started their life together. At first, everything was perfect for Mr. Williams and Vicky. They were deeply in love and enjoyed spending every moment together. However, as time went by, Vicky started to feel guilty about breaking up a marriage. She couldn't help but think that she was the reason for Mrs. Williams' pain and suffering. On the other hand, Mrs. Williams was struggling to move on with her life. She had been with her husband for over 5 years, and the thought of him being with someone else was unbearable. She couldn't forgive him for leaving her for another woman, and she couldn't bring herself to trust anyone again. As guilt consumed Vicky, she started to distance herself from Mr. Williams. She didn't want to be the cause of anyone's pain, and she knew that she had to do the right thing. She sat down with Mr. Williams and told him that she couldn't continue their relationship. She knew that it was the right thing to do, but it broke her heart to let him go. Mr. Williams was devastated. He had left his wife for Vicky, and now she was leaving him. He begged her to stay, but Vicky stood her ground. She knew that she couldn't continue their relationship knowing the pain they had caused to Mrs. Williams. In the end, Mr. Williams and Vicky went their separate ways. Mrs. Williams eventually moved on with her life, and Mr. Williams learned to live with the consequences of his actions. As for Vicky, she knew that she had made the right decision, and she was at peace with herself. Years went by, and Mr. Williams and Vicky never saw each other again. However, they never forgot the love they shared and the lessons they learned from their forbidden love. They both moved on with their lives, but they would always hold a special place in their hearts for each other. And so, they all lived happily ever after, knowing that sometimes, true love comes at a cost, and it's up to us to make the right decision, even if it means letting go of the one we love.